Hi, my name is Kyle Westerman, and this is AEP 855, Module 1, Introduction. My job, I am Kyle Westerman. This is my sixth year of teaching, and it is my first year at Oxford High School in Oxford, Kansas. Like I said, I'm at Oxford Junior High and High School. I am a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher and also the physical education teacher for the 7th and 8th grade. But I also teach high school strength and conditioning, and I also coach football and track there at Oxford. This is my family. I am married. My wife Gina is also a teacher. She's a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing for Cali County. I have two sons, Dexter and Zephyrin. The oldest one, Dexter, is 3 years old, and the youngest one, Zephyrin, is 9 months old. I enjoy the sports and being outdoors as much as possible. Moving on into what art reading was about. So, what are the three types of mindsets? Do you agree or disagree with the research? Um, in talking about the mindsets, I thought I agreed with all three of the mindsets. The first one I think is hard because as teachers, we see a lot of kids that have a huge amount of apathy. And it's not that they're not smart enough to get the topic or the subject or what you're trying to do that day, um, but they just really honestly do not care to learn. And so that one's a struggle, even though I do believe it. There's some days that are more discouraging than others. The second one I think is probably the most important and something that I try to do as much as possible, which is teacher collaboration over isolationism or isolation. I try to collaborate with teachers both in my district and outside of my district as much as possible. I moved from a nearby school to Oxford to start into the PE program and teaching strength and conditioning, which I've been in the weight room with sports throughout my life, but I had not taught it until this year. And so that collaboration piece is very important for me. And luckily, I'm in a school district that highly encourages teacher collaboration. My principal and superintendent have been extremely um, supportive of me going out and learning from other people in different communities. The happiness and optimism part of the research, the mindset. When you first become a teacher, it's really easy to have that happiness and optimism. And as time goes on, sometimes it's a struggle, but you got to look back and see like the great things that have happened in your teaching career, and that helps produce that happiness and optimism and those moments that you get throughout the day that just reminds you why you're there. The five types of dispositions. Again, we talked about, or when we read about the dispositions, I agreed with all of them. I think they're all extremely important, especially when it comes to being a leader of a school or even just being a leader of a classroom. They're all very important. Definitely as a teacher and a principal, having that confidence level and showing the kids that and other teachers as a principal that you have the confidence to do your job and to do it well. As a risk taker and being decisive, I think that falls probably more into maybe the principal category, but it can be as a teacher as well, of maybe trying out a new lesson plan or trying out a new program within the school and being decisive about that and not missing the boat on an opportunity is important. Sense of humor is always important. Helps keeps the kids engaged and creates rapport with your teachers. I thought the fourth one, the empathetically assertive, I thought was an interesting read, and I've never heard it kind of put that way before, where you're empathetic to people's feelings, but you're also assertive in what you want and what you want to get done. And as always, I think anybody that's in education is a constant learner, and we encourage our students to do the same thing. And so, if you're in education, I think you're probably on board with that learner mentality. The three types of practices: focusing, prioritizing, examining feedback and data, and emotional intelligence. I agree with all of them. And this is probably the part where I struggle the most. Um, that focus and prioritizing part, I think, is important because as a principal, you have so much on your plate to deal with. from money issues to disciplinary actions to teachers to the community. You need to make sure that you can focus and prioritize on the most important things and stay focused on those things. Um, the feedback and data is so important in education. And the thing that it talked about is making sure that the data that you're collecting is good data and that it makes sense. I thought that was an important read. And then emotional intelligence. So you got to be able to read the room and understand when you're having a conversation with somebody, um, how they feel and what you're doing. And then, making sure, and I think my district and again, my principal and superintendent have done an amazing job of this emotional intelligence part of always letting teachers know when they've done a fantastic job and are constant encouragement to us as teachers. And they recognize when a teacher is working hard and doing well, which is very appreciative as a teacher there. The eight principles of ethical leadership. Um, Looking at all eight of these, again, I think all eight of them are important, and I agree with all of them. And I think there's some of them here that have, or should say, are a little harder for me to do than others. But going through here, the public interest ahead of self, I think, is important, especially for where I'm at now. We're in such a small community that I think the eyes are watching you a little bit closer since you're in a small community, and so making sure that public interest is met ahead of what I would want as a principal for myself. And then when you talk about number 5 and recognizing talent, I think that's important because you're always looking for the teachers that um, are constantly moving forward and making a difference, and you want to make sure that you keep those teachers around, because if you don't, it's getting tougher out there to find really good teachers. Um, the sensitivity and understanding, I think, is an important part because our kids nowadays are really struggling with different social emotional problems, and they need that sensitivity and understanding from the teachers. And then, but the principal is the one that puts those teachers in place. And so, and again, our profession as teachers is dying in a way where we have a lot of really good teachers leaving because it's getting harder and harder to teach. So being sensitive and understanding to the teachers as a principal, I think, is an important uh, a part of being an ethical leader. Critique of my own. I think looking back at all the things that we had to read about, I think my biggest 3 critiques would be the time management, making sure that I have a focus on the specific things, of not making sure, or of not putting things that don't need to be focused on so much in front of the things that do need my focus right away, and just making sure that I'm making adequate time for everything that is on a principal's plate. I think data is super important, but I honestly struggle reading over data, and it helps doing it within a group. It's really nice being in a small school where you can sit down with all of the teachers 7 through 12 and break down the data of each student and be able to communicate, what's their life like, where are we getting this data, why is it like this. And I think a small community, it's a little bit easier to do that than with a larger school. And then that optimism piece. In the 6 years I've been teaching, like you go into a school and you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you're super optimistic about, okay, this is what I'm going to do in the classroom, and the kids are going to love it, and they're going to learn so much. And sometimes you go in there being as optimistic as possible, and you fall flat on your face, and you got to get up and do it all over again. And I mean, things have changed since I was in high school, and it's different. And then sometimes it's just hard to be optimistic about the future in education sometimes. So how does all the support of the educational success and well-being of each student and adult? I think it's super important. In the reading, it says, yeah, each research point plays an important part. I think as a principal and as a leader, um, you need to have a portion of all those, if not all of all of those. Um, and it's tough, but I think you need a constant reminder. And I think um, the most important one is being a constant learner. And if you're a constant learner, you're always looking self-reflective and looking at yourself to make sure that you are being a good leader. And then I thought the well-being part of your students and your adults is extremely important, because if you're really worried about the well-being of your students, you're going to increase the learning process in your school by putting the best teachers in there, making sure that those kids are felt loved, and that the teachers and everybody care for them. And when that happens, your students learn better. And then also the well-being of adults. You got to keep the good ones in education. We can't let good teachers go, and it's tough sometimes to find good teachers. And you got to make sure that your teachers are being taken care of. And when that happens, a school can be extremely successful. Thank you, and have a great day.